We've just got some breaking news in from Buckingham Palace, folks. So this statement has just come in from Buckingham Palace, and I'll read it for you. It goes on to say, His Majesty has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles, and...
Meghan holds the title Duchess of Sussex as a courtesy title. It comes entirely from being married to Harry, who holds the actual peerage, Duke of Sussex. Unlike Harry's dukedom, which is a hereditary peerage, Meghan's title carries no rank of her own. She holds no peerage in her own right. That distinction matters. Peerages and courtesy titles are removed through very different legal mechanisms, and there's no indication either has been touched in her case. How titles can actually be removed. There are basically two routes. Asterisk styles and honorary titles like HRH or ceremonial styles are conferred by the monarch and can, in principle, be removed at the monarch's discretion. No parliament required. Asterisk removing a prince or princess title can happen by statute or under the royal prerogative, though the latter would likely need ministerial advice, and historically parliament has been the main route. The only time in modern history titles were stripped via Act of Parliament was the Titles Deprivation Act 1917, passed during World War I to remove titles from members of the peerage who had sided with Germany. It affected 3 British princes and a viscount, including Queen Victoria's grandson Charles Edward, Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, and Ernest Augustus, Duke of Cumberland, great-grandson of George III. That legislation was narrow and wartime specific. It doesn't give a general power to strip peerages. This is almost certainly where the fabricated Meghan story borrowed its language from. In 2025, Buckingham Palace announced Andrew would lose his titles following renewed scrutiny of his conduct. The actual palace statement read, His Majesty has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles, and honors of Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The statement added that the censure stood regardless of Andrew's continued denial of allegations against him, and that the King and Queen's sympathies remained with victims and survivors of abuse. What made it unusual procedurally? Rather than going through Parliament, the King used royal warrants to delete Andrew's dukedom from the roll of the peerage, a first-of-its-kind approach for a working royal in modern times. One thing even that process couldn't touch. Andrew retains the freedom of the City of London, an honor the King has no power to revoke. You'll sometimes see the exact phrase, His Majesty has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles, appear in AI-generated or clickbait videos about Meghan. That's not a coincidence. It's lifted almost verbatim from the real Andrew statement and repurposed with different names. There's a related, genuine legislative episode worth knowing too. A removal of titles bill was widely misreported in tabloids as targeting Harry and Meghan, but it actually dealt only with hereditary peerages and was never really about the Sussexes. A good example of how a real news story gets warped into a false one. Meghan's title hasn't been revoked. There's no legal mechanism currently in motion to do so, and the only real recent precedent for this kind of action, Andrew's, was a formal, publicly documented process, not a secretive family intervention. Here's the deep dive on all 3, real and documented. This is the closest real-world analog to what the fabricated Meghan story borrowed from. Timeline, October 17, 2025. Andrew announced he would voluntarily stop using his remaining titles, saying continued accusations against him were distracting from the work of the King and the royal family. He and ex-wife Sarah Ferguson also surrendered the Duke and Duchess of York titles that day. October 30, 2025. Buckingham Palace announced the King had initiated a formal process to remove Andrew's style, titles, and honors, and that his lease protection at Royal Lodge was being revoked, with formal eviction notice served. The statement closed by affirming the King and Queen's sympathies remained with victims and survivors of abuse. November 3 to 5, 2025. The Crown formalized it through letters patent under the Great Seal, published in the Gazette, declaring Andrew no longer entitled to Royal Highness or the title Prince. His name was also struck from the official roll of the peerage, a step handled by the Lord Chancellor David Lammy as custodian of that role. December 1st, 2025. He was also formally expelled from the Order of the Garter, with his name erased from its register. Late November 2025. The royal family's official website updated the line of succession to list him as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor instead of Duke of York, though notably, he remains technically in the line of succession, just far down it. Removing someone from the line entirely requires the kind of legislation used in 1919 or a personal renunciation like Edward VIII's abdication. What triggered it? Renewed scrutiny of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, intensified by the posthumous publication of Virginia Giuffre's memoir. A letters patent is an open legal document under the Great Seal of the realm, meaning it's public by design, unlike a private letters close. It's formally issued on the monarch's authority, usually on ministerial advice, and used for things like public appointments, conferring honors, granting city status, or royal assent to legislation. The UK Ministry of Justice recognizes roughly 92 distinct types. Process-wise, there are typically 3 documents involved: a warrant carrying the monarch's instructions, which the Lord Chancellor uses to prepare the actual letters patent. Different seal colors mark different purposes: dark green wax for peerage creation, blue for royal family matters, scarlet for bishops and most other patents. This same mechanism has been used both ways historically. 1917. George V used letters patent to define which family members could hold Royal Highness and Prince/Princess, restricting it mainly to children of the sovereign and grandchildren through the eldest son of the Prince of Wales. That's the same instrument still governing who's automatically HRH today. 1957. Used to grant Prince Philip the title Prince of the United Kingdom. 1919. Used, alongside the Titles Deprivation Act, to strip 4 royals/peers of their titles. 2025. Used to strip Andrews. Worth knowing, under the 1917 ruling, the Sussexes were technically still entitled to use HRH. They simply chose not to, following a restriction Queen Elizabeth II later applied informally to non-working royals. That's a useful contrast. It shows titles can be used by choice versus formally revoked, which are very different things. Behind all the title mechanics sits a separate, older body of law governing who can inherit the crown itself. Bill of Rights 1689 and Act of Settlement 1701 established that Protestant descendants of Sophia, Electress of Hanover, are eligible to succeed, barring Catholics or those who marry Catholics. This was originally about excluding Catholic claimants after the Glorious Revolution. Royal Marriages Act 1772 required royal descendants to get the sovereign's consent to marry, on pain of losing succession rights. Abdication Act 1936, the one true voluntary removal precedent. Edward VIII gave up the throne to Mary Wallis Simpson, becoming Duke of Windsor rather than King. Perth Agreement, 2011, Succession to the Crown Act 2013. Replaced male preference primogeniture with absolute primogeniture for anyone born after October 28, 2011, and removed the automatic disqualification for marrying a Catholic, though the monarch still can't personally be Catholic, since they're supreme governor of the Church of England. Because succession law is shared across 15 Commonwealth realms, this required parallel legislation passed simultaneously in Canada, Australia, New Zealand and others, a rare case of coordinated multinational royal lawmaking. Real-world effect. Prince Michael of Kent lost his succession place in 1978 for marrying a Roman Catholic, and was only restored to it in 2015, once the 2013 Act came into force. If you want to be updated on what is happening in the palace, kindly click the subscribe button and follow for more.